What they're accused of is a supposed illegal payment of around $2 million or a million Swiss francs that was made in 2011 for some work that was undertaken or over a decade beforehand, so from about 1998 through to early 2000s. And according to the Swiss authorities, that was an illegal payment in 2011 and wasn't related to that work.
Well, both of them are claiming innocence. What have they had to say?
Well, the court case is unfolding as we speak, tonight our time. And, what they're saying basically is, the payment wasn't made at the time that Platini did the work, and no one disputes that he did the work. The payment wasn't made at that time because FIFA didn't have the same, wasn't in the same financial position at that time that they were in 2011. And Sepp Blatter has said, we really made a lot of money in 2006, and that's when we were able to sort of catch up on some of these payments. I guess, that's something to be tested in the court as to whether that's accurate or not.
Why has it taken this long for the trial to finally get underway?
That's a good question. The Swiss authorities seized approximately 9 terabytes of data from FIFA in May 2015. And here we are 7 years later getting to this case, and they've only actually pursued 2 other cases in addition to this, one of which fell through altogether because the statute of limitations had passed, and the other of which they're still sort of pursuing in the courts with one of Qatar's richest men. So, for 7 years of action, 9 terabytes of material, they've picked on this particular case where you've got 2 very high-profile people in football, both of whom are claiming, yes, this work was undertaken, yes, the payment was made a decade later, and the Swiss authorities are saying, it's not related to that at all.
Well, what will happen in the next 11 days or so? What are the proceedings and who will give evidence?
Well, I think it remains to be seen who's going to give evidence. At the moment, we've opening comments have come from the 2 protagonists, both of whom are proclaiming their innocence. I guess key to some of those discussions or some of the evidence will be the chief financial officer from FIFA at the time, who, what we've seen so far and what we know so far is he's certainly in the midst of it all because he had to make the payment on the authority of the then FIFA President Sepp Blatter. So he will have some interesting things to say. And I guess it depends on what else the Swiss authorities may have dug into in terms of any communications between the 2 men. We know from some of the other FIFA-related investigations, for instance, from the US, that they've had access to a lot more material than just what was at FIFA. So who knows whether the Swiss have gone that deeply as well.
And Bonita, do you think more allegations of wrongdoing could emerge during this trial, and who else might be implicated?
Look, it's a good question as to whether more allegations of wrongdoing will come out in this trial. I'm certainly aware that from other FIFA whistleblowers around the world, that there have been a lot of issues that have been taken up with authorities in a number of countries, not just Switzerland, but others as well. And a lot of those haven't been pursued for one reason or the other. There's a general perception that the Swiss have acted very, very slowly on these issues, and they've got their own reasons for doing that. But, when you've got Sepp Blatter, who is a master politician, a master sports politician, and quite Machiavellian on the stand, and also wanting to maintain what he sees as his positive legacy, as well as Michel Platini, who's one of the best players the world has ever produced, has been responsible for a successful World Cup in 1998, and also very strongly feels he should have been FIFA president now. I think there could be some interesting things that come out of it.
What penalties do both men face if they are found guilty? I mean, Sepp Blatter in particular is not in great shape health-wise, and he remains banned from football already.
Yes, they do, and those bans might also expire relatively soon as well. And it hasn't stopped them going to some football events. But if they were found guilty in the Swiss courts and they were to, exercise the maximum penalty, it would be 5 years in jail. Whether that would ever happen, of course, is up to the court system. But Sepp Blatter's in his 80s. He doesn't have good health. The court case was even delayed by 24 hours because he was having chest pain. It would remain to be seen whether anything like that actually happened.
How much has FIFA been damaged by this case, and what has it done to improve its reputation, and what does it still need to address?
In terms of dealing with this case, what they did was very swiftly back in 2015 was get rid of Sepp Blatter. I mean, when those famous FBI arrests happened in May 2015, he intended 2 days later to still stand for president, and it was only when he was tapped on the shoulder very forcefully a few days after that he realised that he needed to go. So, one, they moved him on and they banned him from football. And the same happened with Michel Platini as well. And he had been seen for many years as the heir apparent and intended to become the next president after Sepp Blatter. So that didn't happen. So they've dealt with that aspect of it. But the issue that still remains with FIFA, and it becomes the old word of culture. We hear about it so much in so many organisations, in so many issues. When it comes to process versus culture, culture wins every time. And culture hasn't changed within World Football Administration. There's no greater example of that than currently, where we've got the next hosts of the 2022 World Cup, Qatar, who, putting aside any of the other issues that we've heard about the Qatar World Cup and workers' rights and all of that, which are very important, only recently in the United Nations, they failed to vote against Russia. And yet Russia is invading Ukraine and absolutely trashing the human rights of the Ukrainian people. And yet FIFA has no statement to make when that country is hosting the next World Cup. So that's a really good example of where FIFA has policies, it has process, but it doesn't mean a thing.
We'll be watching how this all plays out. Bonita Mersiades, thank you so much.
That's a pleasure. Thanks, Yvonne.